Hello and a very warm welcome to the late-breaking F1 podcast presented by Harry Eade, Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking, today reviewing a rather uneventful Austrian Grand Prix with absolutely no highlights whatsoever, Sam.
Yeah, I was on live stream for it and I actually fell asleep for 2 hours. It was so dull. No screaming, no nipples, and absolutely no drama took place on the live stream. Harry, what were you up to while the race was very dull?
I firmly had my nipples underneath my t-shirt, I'd be pleased to say.
Nipples out for George, everyone.
No, we're nipping this in the bud right now. It's not
indeed.
It's not a thing.
Welcome if you're new.
We've just had one of the most dramatic incidents between two leading drivers in many a season, and here we are talking about George Russell's nipples, because why not? Right, what have we got coming up on today's show? Moment of the race, of course, later on. Our thoughts on the Alpine duo continuing to battle. A much better day for RB. Of course, George Russell's win, Piastri's podium, Carlos Sainz's podium as well. But we would be remiss for not starting, of course, with the battle for the lead that took place between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. A slow pit stop from Max Verstappen caused the two to be far closer on their final stint compared to the first two stints. This led to a number of very close calls going into turn three. And eventually there was one close call too many when Max Verstappen and Lando Norris had contact, both of them receiving damage. Max Verstappen limping back to the pits and eventually finishing in fifth place. Lando Norris limping back to the pits and was out. Sam, there was a lot to get into there, so we'll start at least with the early parts of this battle. How did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, the battle started to unfold because Red Bull's greatest strength, which is so often their pit stops, you know, last race out in Spain, they put together a 1.9 second pit stop for Max Verstappen, and he had a 7-second lead before coming into the pits. So when they delivered a 6.5 second pit stop, that is so unusual for Red Bull to make such a fluff up like that. And it looked like they were having problems because, of course, when Perez came in as well afterwards, he had an 8.5 second pit stop. So it was...
Just to say on that one, I think that was
that penalty related?
5-second penalty.
Nah, we're going to pretend that didn't happen.
Wash Red Bull. Good.
Doesn't help my point at all. So we can spend the facts here. So yeah, pit stops were not the order of the day for Red Bull. And when they needed to deliver it, you heard Max Verstappen's expression when he came out the pit lane. It was just kind of like, oh, great. Yeah, of course. I'm having issues with my car. I don't feel comfortable on the tyres. We've come in and done a pit stop. It's the longest pit stop I've ever had. And now Lando Norris is within 1 second of me within the rest of that lap. He then locks up, of course, going through turn 4, massively damaging the tyre, I imagine, straight away, which isn't great. And Lando was on him like a cat chasing a mouse. He was desperately trying to get hold of it. Sorry, I was trying to search for the end of that metaphor as I was going through it. So
you often are, but that's
say an animal and it'll probably work.
That's so true, isn't it? We got there. This worked it out. But yeah, then the battle ensued. Now, there was a lot of moaning, a lot of whinging from both the drivers while this battle was going on. Lando Norris was sending it from every country within Europe to try and end up at the apex of turn 3. Came back from Germany, he came across from France, and he dived all the way from Italy. He was really sending it from anywhere that he could. And he continually moaned over the radio, oh, he's moving under braking. And you know what? There's a lot of people that we had in the stream chat that were saying, oh, he's whinging. Just drive the car. But I have to say, if you are, as a driver, witnessing someone moving around under braking, they're condensing their speed from 200 miles an hour down to about 30 in a matter of seconds. That's very scary and quite dangerous. So if Lando's witnessing that, I'm okay with him calling it out. And you've got to win any way you can. Max Verstappen is one of the best opponents you will ever go up against. Use every tool that you've got in your locker to try and dethrone him. I don't mind Lando calling this out. Anyway, they get closer and closer. Lando, of course, runs wide. He outbrakes himself and kind of holds Max up, overtaking him off track. He gives the position back. I'm glad no penalty was given there. I think it was the right call. You know, Lando gave it back almost immediately. It was a little bit touch and go, but he gave it back within the same straight. I think that was right for them to carry on. It gave us great racing. And then eventually we come up to the form of the incident where Lando went for a dive down the outside and Max Verstappen seemingly was braking slightly in the direction towards the outside of the corner. So the gap that initially existed between the two rapidly closed. The cars are so feeble these days. We've seen how sharp those front wings can be. Front wing touches, we get a puncture. I personally put the blame on Max Verstappen. I think this is Max's fault. I think the penalty that he was given was correct. And I think that the penalty was given in terms of the amount of contact, not the damage in the DNF that ensued after that, which I think is correct. I think that's fine. Wheel-to-wheel banging, one car got driven wide. Track was essentially closed off, and I was happy with that decision overall, because I actually think, as much as it was dramatic, it's a bit of a shame, because I think we could have had a pretty epic battle all the way to the line between those two, because I think if Lando did get back in front, I think Max comfortably would have held on. I think the cars are very evenly matched, so it's a bit of a shame that we saw the damage ensue, but equally, I love the drama, Mick, and I'm here for it, and I'm glad it happened, because it was great to watch.
What did you make of the battle, Harry? The fact that firstly it even happened because Verstappen looked relatively comfortable early on. Your thoughts on Norris being able to, along with the help of the slow pit stop, him being able to catch back up to Verstappen, but then the action that happened afterwards as well?
Firstly, welcome back F1 2021. It's a pleasure to have you back. A British driver and Max Verstappen having a controversial crash whilst battling for the lead. We have missed you. Twitter is on fire as we speak, and it's good to be here again.
Is that what I can smell?
Yeah. It's burning as we speak. Look, it was for the most part, I think, quite an enjoyable battle. But there are a few moments in there that were a bit dodgy. I don't say it. Also, Max Verstappen complaining about Norris dive bombing, I thought was rich, given his past.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Given his past antics, you can't just dive bomb me. I was like, okay, Max. But yeah, for the most part, I think it was okay. I think the problem is with Verstappen, there are a few things that have gone maybe unpunished that have needed to be punished in the past that he's done, that he's still doing here. And it's kind of led up to this incident. I think the moving under braking that he did once or twice was not on, especially after Norris had already committed to the move. Again, I know Norris was dive bombing quite a few times there, but Norris was committed. You can't then move on in on him. So I didn't like that. But like you said, Sam, the move that they made where Norris did send one, he went off the track, he gave it back. Like, fine, I'm absolutely okay with that. It was hard racing. Obviously, he went off the track, but he gave the place back. Fair dues. But yeah, the Verstappen moving under braking, not happy about. The incident itself is probably the most marginal one they had, and it's ironic that was the one that ended up being the sort of race-ending incident or battle-ending incident for them, because it was Verstappen made his defensive move. Norris then commits to the outside, and it's the slightest. I to blame Verstappen, but it's the slightest of. He's drifting. It's not a movement. He's just drifting out wide. I don't think that's deliberate at all, and they have the mirrors to contacts, and it's puncture for both of them. So that for me is probably the least offensive out of all the battles that they were having there. So for the most part, I quite enjoyed it. I think maybe I just enjoyed having a battle for the lead again, but it was spicy to say the least.
It was spicy, and for the most part, it was unexpected because Max Verstappen led away relatively comfortably at the start, and the first sign that this might have ended up becoming a battle was how the hard tyres didn't really do all that well. We're accustomed to seeing in F1 how the hard tyre not used at all during qualifying, but come race day, it tends to be the preferred tyre. Here it was established quite early on that actually the medium is the better compound. And of course, we knew from the very start that Verstappen was the only one of those front runners that did not have two fresh sets of the mediums. And he only had one. Norris, of course, and others had two. And you could tell Verstappen in the middle stint on the hard tyre wasn't very happy, even though he still had a good lead. He wasn't very happy. The slow pit stop has obviously brought them far closer together, far quicker. But I do think in that final stint, Norris might well have caught up to the back of Verstappen anyway. Not saying he would have got by, but I think those older tyres that he was on, the older medium tyres in that final stint, were costing him a little bit. In terms of the action itself, I largely agree with what both of you have said. I do think there was at least one instance of Verstappen under braking that was unacceptable. I also agree with you where Norris has given the place back. I haven't got a problem with that. Yes, he left it until the last possible moment and made sure he wasn't too disadvantaged by it, but any driver would do that, so I'm not too fussed there. I also agree that Verstappen was the culprit for the crash that ended it all. He is the one that moved over on Lando Norris. Again, it is so marginal, but that's racing. Like, he moves over across him, and they have contact, and they both suffer for it. So I agreed with the stewards on that one. I will say, Lando Norris, it's two sides of the same coin here, but his pace recently has really impressed me, because he is the only driver that has been able to touch Max Verstappen or even get close to him. And I appreciate that he is giving us these battles. On the other side, it is disappointing that he's not able to take advantage of some of the situations he's putting himself in more than he is. That lunge up the inside where he knew that he only had one more track limit violation before he would get a penalty was foolish. Let's say he pulls it off. I still think it's a low percentage move to try in that spot. And I appreciate him going for the win and maybe not playing the team game where, the team might prefer that he bags 18 secure points. I don't know. But I just, as I mentioned on yesterday's episode, he's so close, but he's just missing a couple of things that would make him an exceptional driver, in my opinion.
I was thinking this as we were watching, and again, there are a couple of marginal moves from Verstappen, but I think for the most part, Verstappen was out-racing Norris in that battle until obviously the collision happened. I think there were a couple of times where you thought Norris had it done, and actually Verstappen came back or defended it. And again, we saw that in the sprint race where he made the move, had got the move done, and then Verstappen came back at him. He just left the inside wide open. So, I think it's a fair point. I think, but then does that come from Verstappen having had a year's worth of battling Lewis Hamilton for a title and Norris not having that experience? I don't know, but yeah, that's a fair point.
It was called out that the moves that Lando Norris was making reminded them of early Max Verstappen, sending these dive bombs, a little bit less of care for if there's going to be, a crash or they're going to wipe themselves out. It's kind of all guns blazing for the absolute, main prize. And actually, a world champion isn't built on one race win in a season. It's built on being in the top two every single race across an entire year. And actually, you pick up the best points, you're the most consistent. And I think that's where we're seeing that. Verstappen has matured. He's grown. He's a world champion. We've seen him succeed over time. He's come up against great adversaries such as Lewis Hamilton and conquered and won those battles. And now he's up against this almost fresh challenger in Lando Norris. And Lando Norris hasn't been through those hurdles yet. He hasn't faced those battles. He hasn't come across those challenges. And this is his training field at the moment. That McLaren, I don't think, is going to win him a driver's title right now. So maybe it's best that it's happening as we speak. And maybe next season, if McLaren are closer, he'll be aware of what to go ahead with and he'll be able to push through. But the moves looked rash. Verstappen's lines through some of the braking zones and out of some of the corners were fantastic. His defensive ability has really come on leaps and bounds over the last 2 or 3 years. And he displayed it brilliantly here at Austria, a place where if you get one traction zone wrong and you lose the back end, you could be passed so easily. And he didn't make those mistakes. So I was, apart from the moving and braking, which we've all, said we don't agree with, Verstappen was again sensational, apart from where he caused the incident, and which is a real shame because that could have been one of the battles for the ages if that got all the way to the end of the Grand Prix, I think.
Still extended his championship lead, though.
Ridiculous that he still beat Perez by 15 seconds.
I think we need to come on to that. That's ridiculous.
We're getting onto that.
Harry, what are your thoughts on the mentality that Lando Norris does have and what mentality he should have? So you could argue he's in a position at the moment where if he doesn't make these, let's say, rash moves, he's not going to beat Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. You could say that's not going to happen anyway, but unless he takes wins away from Verstappen, that's not going to become a fight. Should his mentality be more about beating Verstappen or more about this still ongoing battle between McLaren and Ferrari in the championship?
I think for not if you base it on realistic options here, it should probably be focused on Ferrari. But for Norris, he's not going to care about that. He wants race wins. He's had the taste of one now, and he wants that to continue. And yeah, a championship fight between him and Max is probably unlikely, but where he can take a race win off him, I think, yeah, I'd be disappointed if he held back for any reason to preserve a fight against Ferrari. And yes, you might look at the end of the year, Ferrari do beat them, and say, well, Austria could be a pinpoint of that, but Norris isn't here to finish second to Verstappen. He's had so many years of watching Verstappen in a top car, and him and the McLaren has not been a top car or not been a top car very often, and he probably knows more than a lot of drivers that these sorts of opportunities don't come around all the time. Next year, McLaren could build another 17th in a DNF. It's unlikely, but it could happen. So he knows these opportunities aren't always available to him. So I personally don't see a problem for him going for the wins like this.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say this isn't the last we will have heard about what has happened today. But until that day comes, let's review bold predictions. Harry, you'll kick us off. What was your bold prediction?
My bold prediction was that the top three in the sprint and the top three in the race would be totally different. And Oscar Piastri, I hate you.
There was a moment where I thought, oh God, he somehow got this right on the last bit of the race. And then I saw Piastri.
Yeah, same. I thought I'd nailed it, but never mind. Well done, Oscar. You idiot. Sad
little life, Oscar.
Well, Sam, your bold prediction, whilst not being right, became slightly more right than it would have been if Verstappen had won the race.
Yeah. I mean, it was bold. It was the aim of the game. No points, though.
Remind the listeners what that was.
Every single session that could have been competitive would have a different leader at the top of it. So different sprint pole, different sprint winger, different pole position holder, different race winner. So 4 different winners of each competitive session, so to speak. They were all Max Verstappen and were going to be all Max Verstappen up until the very last one as well, if George Russell didn't come along and lead after they came together, of course. So, at one point, it could have been more wrong if I tried. Ben, yours?
My bold prediction was that 5 different teams would be eliminated in Q1 or SQ1. It was relatively close to happening in SQ1. 4 different teams were eliminated. So I thought, just one more needed tomorrow. And it was further away from being right in actual qualifying. So I will, as is custom this season, take the L.
It's gone well, this, isn't it?
Shall we take our first break on this episode? On the other side, we've got more chat about the likes of Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari. So, of course, all that battling out front between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen led to a somewhat unexpected podium where George Russell took his second career win ahead of Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz. Firstly, apologies, George Russell, because nearly every single situation in a race review, we would focus on the race winner first. We have taken an exception to that today. I hope you understand. I know you are a big fan of this podcast. So we've got a Russell, Piastri and Sainz podium. I appreciate, Sam, that Russell might well have been handed this win, but at the same time, an impressive display from him across the whole weekend.
Speaking of impressive displays, I did predict that George Russell will win the feature race. So,
great. Did you bold predict that? Cool. That's no points then. Good.
Damn. Okay, good. Anyway, he was impressive across the weekend. And I've said it multiple times so far, but you've got to be in it to win it. And he had beat Lewis Hamilton in every single session so far across the Grand Prix. He was sensationally good in qualifying. He put the car where it needed to be, ended up being P3, of course, in qualifying because Piastri got his lap time deleted. And then he held his own throughout the Grand Prix. He managed to get away from Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton, who ended up having a little battle behind. And he fell behind Norris and Verstappen, right? The gap was large. It was about 10, 15 seconds, and then it kind of dropped down a bit to 8 to 10 seconds. But like I said, in it to win it, and if Piastri had bottled his qualifying lap and had qualified in either 3rd or 4th, there's every chance that Oscar Piastri goes on to win that race. Well, he didn't because he mucked it up himself, and George Russell was the next man to take advantage of that, and fair play to him. Deserves a lot of credit. He was consistent. He got the job done. It was calm from George. And sometimes you get a little bit lucky. You get a bit of luck on your side, and he picks up his second Grand Prix victory in Formula One. So well done to George. He did get handed it, but you've got to be the person there to be handed it to. And that's exactly what he did.
It's been a long time coming for Mercedes, Harry, but your thoughts on Russell's win?
Yeah, we're not going to say they figured the car out. No, I'm joking.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about George Russell's comments when he came out and said, in Bahrain, who'd have thought this? And I thought, hang on, George. Hang on. The car is suddenly...
Us minnows, Mercedes, yeah.
Like, sorry, who's he... Firstly, you're an 8-time consecutive World Championship team. Record breaking. Secondly, you haven't won this on ability. You won it because the top two took each other
pure
out.
pace, mate. All pace.
No, sorry, George.
I appreciate he didn't finish there, but can we just mention that he was, throughout the first part of the Bahrain Grand Prix, in third?
Yep. Yes.
Good stuff. I don't really have much more to add than what you said, Sam. Sometimes in F1 and motor racing, you have to be in it to win it, and George Russell was the man that was in it today. And then he won it. So I think full credit to him. The Piastri... that's probably a side point. You guys probably covered it in the quality episode yesterday, but I know that's the rule, but it's very, very harsh, that penalty.
We said the same thing.
Yeah, anyway, but you know, they're the rules and you got to play by them, and he obviously didn't. So, yeah, Piastri will be kicking himself for that, but Russell I thought was impressive. And I thought he drove quite a measured... His pace was good, quite a measured race, especially at the start, because he had his teammate, his vastly more experienced teammate, clambering all over him at the start of the race, who then after that, what happened? I don't know, just disappeared into the ether. But George kept his head, didn't wreck his tyres or anything, and yeah, his pace was very impressive, and especially at the end when, you know, he had Piastri closing in on him on different tyres, fresher tyres, I believe, over Russell. They were at least different tyres, but anyway.
Honestly, Harry, there were so many pit stops in that Grand Prix that I don't know what's going on.
Half of them made by Charles Leclerc, actually.
Oh my God, the man loves the pit lane.
Lesser spotted 12 stop.
Playing double Z.
So when Martin Brundle said he's on his 4th set of tyres and it's only halfway through the race, I was like, goodness me. Anyway, yeah, Russell, yeah, very fortunate, but yeah, some days you just have to be there. And to be fair to him, it's not like this is a real fluky one. As he said himself, he's kind of been in this 3rd place position over the last few races. We saw it in Spain. I know he didn't get the podium and Hamilton did, but saw in Spain that he was there. Obviously, Canada, he had pole and then ended up on the podium. So Mercedes have been there, and that's, whilst they don't have the overall pace, I guess that's the best they can hope for the moment, is to be at that back end of the podium. We're in the top 5 and pick up the pieces if there is an incident like that. So yeah, fair play to George. Kept his nose clean and takes home a win. And you can't say it's not well deserved because he didn't crash into anyone. So well deserved.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. It was a very impressive performance from him. And I would have said that if he'd finished 3rd. It was a very impressive performance nonetheless. And sometimes that's how most racing goes. Overall, very impressive. And speaking of like the early battle that he had, who would have known how important that would have been? That's why you race for every position, right? Is that you just don't know how critical that's going to be to come the end of the race. Now, who knows? Maybe if Hamilton had made that stick, he'd have still found a way past. I don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't guess. But equally, you know, because George Russell was able to keep his composure and stay ahead of his closest competitors, that's what's enabled him to be in the right place at the right time when an opportunity has presented itself. So, yeah, they'll still want to get there on pure pace. Obviously, the last time and the only other time that Russell's won, it was more based on the pace that he had rather than an error from someone else. But, you know, you win enough races in F1, you'll win both. So, yeah, fair play to him. Sam, you've already alluded to this. Oscar Piastri, when we mentioned him in the qualifying review yesterday, we were saying what would represent a good day? Would it be getting past one of the Mercedes or one of the Ferraris? Obviously, he's made a lot more progress than we thought he would based on some other factors. Seemed to have very good pace. That could have been a win.
Oh, I'm a bit gutted for him. I think he drove brilliantly today. If you just remove the disappointment of qualifying, I think he drove brilliantly today. He made exceptional overtakes, going around the outside of 2 different cars, both Sainz and Perez, through that middle sector is a phenomenal.
Filth.
Yeah,
Filthy.
It is dirty. And he did that again in the sprint race over his teammate. Remember, he got past Norris in that manner as well. It's the Piastri corner at this point. And his pace was great. He managed to make the strategy work really, really well. You just think, mate, if you'd have just backed off on qualifying by half a tenth and kept it inside track limits, he'd have won that Grand Prix because he had the race pace. His race pace was better than George Russell's. You know, the fact that he was able to close that gap up so much and it's only 2 seconds come the end of the Grand Prix. The McLaren was great. Piastri was really, really strong. He should have won. And he'll be kicking himself a little bit. And if you, again, like I say, if you remove qualifying and you only look at the race, he is in contention for driver of the day with how he drove. He was exceptional. He got damage from Perez, who forced him off wide. And we're going to get onto that in a little bit as well. He then had to make his way back through all of the people in front of him. He overtook cars that are very similar in pace. Calm, measured. I've got so much love and respect for him with how he performs on the radio and on the mic as well. He should have won. He will walk away from this and go, I've got loads of time, but that should be race win number 1 for him. And I think he knows that.
Harry, how do Piastri and McLaren look at this result for him? Because you could look at it and say, as soon as Lando Norris and Verstappen had that incident, he was pretty much in that fight. I know he finished second, but he was somewhat there to pick up the pieces. But equally, he could have had one more position. How do you think they'll view it?
Yeah, I think they'll be disappointed, I'm sure, that he wasn't quite there to take the win, because he should have been, technically. Russell qualified third and was the one who won the race. It should have been Piastri who qualified third and won the race. So they'll look at that with some disappointment, but again, he's early days in his career as Piastri. I feel like I always end up saying this, but he's very impressive for where he is in his career. A mistake, as I said, I think it's harsh, the penalty goal, but it was a mistake from his side, if that they are the rules. And he punished for it, because today he could have had a race win. That'll stick with it, I'm sure. So he was very impressive today. Unlucky with the penalty yesterday, and I'm sure McLaren will be disappointed, but they're going to be disappointed anyway because they lost out on a win with Norris. So I'm not sure they'll hold it against him too much, and he still takes home some pretty valuable points for McLaren. So he was impressive again today. The boy's still learning.
Yeah, he was very good. The only other thing I wanted to mention on top of what both of you have said, and I think this is arguably the number 1 takeaway I've had from Oscar Piastri and at least this race, is that his biggest weakness to this point in his F1 career has been his tyre management. It's one of the reasons I think he does quite well in sprints, is that it's less of a factor. Here, the second and third stint where he's making a lot of progress, that is unlocked by the fact that he has gone longer than anyone else on that first stint, on that first set of mediums. He did a very good job making those tyres last, because as soon as he makes a couple of laps difference over his competitors, he's got that advantage for the rest of the Grand Prix. So I thought he was very impressive. I think he did have the third best pace out there today after Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, in which case you would have to call it a disappointment that he wasn't the one there to pick up the win. But even so, I actually think that takeaway of how well he managed the tyres in this race, a very, very difficult race to manage the tyres, I think McLaren will be buoyed by that. Ferrari, let's get on to them. So, Harry, they managed to capitalise on Red Bull's difficult day by scoring 1 fewer point than them. What did you make of that?
Oh dear. I mean, Leclerc's incident with Piastri at turn 1, I can't really blame him too much for. That's just turn 1. He obviously compounded it later on by running into him on the same lap.
Yeah, that was good.
Which, maybe don't do that next time, Michelle. But it was, race kind of done from there. From his point of view. That's the ice cream. That's the ice cream truck.
Thanks for going past. Come on! 99 for everyone!
Good.
Get your fakes out!
No. Yeah, Ferrari are disappointed. I think they'll be encouraged, I guess, a bit by the pace that they had. But it was, I guess, better than it was in Spain, I think, in my view. Obviously, Leclerc can really unlock it, but for Sainz at least, he picks up the podium. But it's quite intriguing that for Ferrari's. They really have just done Monaco, and that is all. That is all we're doing. We're tapping out.
We are doing street circuits this year.
Yeah. Nothing else. It's an interesting one because again they still didn't look as promising as potentially we thought they would be, or others thought they would be this weekend. So they'll be disappointed to still not pick up that many points, especially when one Red Bull has an incident and the other one is slow as anything. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And Martin Brundle made a comment yesterday in qualifying because Sainz said something about it's a lot of bouncing on one of his laps and whether they've got some porpoising issues, which, goodness me, that's...
Oh, Lewis Hamilton's going to cry.
He will have a breakdown. He's too old for that.
Not again, please. That's why I'm moving.
My back.
My goddamn back.
I just get a soft ride.
Which is interesting if these upgrades have brought that back into play. But yeah, who knows? So yeah, they'll be scratching their heads a little bit on where that pace has gone, because even before Monaco, which I know is I guess now you could say is an anomaly, their pace was looking good, and obviously they won Australia as well. So yeah, a tough weekend again for them, for the Scuderia gang.
Yeah, not great. I feel like Carlos Sainz's podium is the biggest sure podium of all time. Just like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll take that. But as we know, he was on course for a 5th place finish. Leclerc, it was difficult to judge his progress, I think, Sam, but ultimately he comes away with no points.
Yeah, my fantasy team is absolutely gutted. Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. Great. Cheers, guys. Appreciate that.
In the mud.
Still beat Harry, I'm sure.
It probably has, yes.
Probably has, yes. Ferrari will be kicking themselves. This is an opportunity squandered, in my opinion. You know, if this happened 4 races ago, there's every chance that Ferrari end up being 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, perhaps, with Piastri in the middle. Their race pace used to be much better than Mercedes. They were equally fighting with McLaren, pretty much racing race out. And of course, they were regularly beating Perez. And now they come to a race like Austria, where their upgrade should be effective, their engine should be strong, they should be very competitive. And whilst Carlos Sainz, I think, had a very consistent race weekend, I don't think it set the world alight. I don't think he was anything particularly impressive. And I lucked into that 3rd place. It was going to be a 5th. And Charles Leclerc, of course, had a bit of a nightmare. They should be the ones to pick up the pieces when that all falls apart between Lando and Max Verstappen. And the fact that they're not even next in line, they're 3rd in line, the fact they've walked away only from this Grand Prix with 15 points is really disappointing. I expected the upgrades to be far more effective, and I thought Ferrari would be far more in this fight. I think Red Bull can kind of dust their hands off and go, phew, that could have gone worse for us. Mercedes picked up the most points. Thank God we haven't got to worry about them because they're so far away, it doesn't matter. So, you know, they can have an awful weekend, but because the other teams can't seem to put 2 drivers in the right place and have a car that actually performs, it doesn't matter to Red Bull. They're all right. So I think Ferrari will be disappointed.
Okay, it's time for Driver of the Day.
The verdict is in. You're the driver of the day. You're the driver of the day. You're good at driving.
Who have you got, Harry?
Nico Hülkenberg.
Great shout.
My G. I thought he was a tremendous today, despite the fact that both... Did they 2-stop or 3-stop at the end? I can't remember. At least twice, Haas pit him after... They 2-stopped. Oh, so both times.
So.
They pit him after Magnussen, despite the fact that Magnussen was behind him. Both times. Whatever. It almost cost him the place on the first pit stop. But he... Yeah, he was excellent all afternoon and kept behind Perez at the very end of the race. So, and take P6 after the Verstappen Norris incident, which are some very, very valuable points for Haas. So, yeah, Nico Hülkenberg for me.
Yes, Nico Hülkenberg. Sometimes I think there are multiple candidates for this award. Today, I think Hülkenberg is the only one. I thought he was head and shoulders above everyone else. So, yeah, that's 2 votes for Hülkenberg. Sam?
I do think there are some candidates. I think Ricciardo deserves a shout. This was by far, I think, his best weekend over his teammate Tsunoda. I think Gasly deserves a shout. He was really, really strong in the car that is technically slower of the 2 Alpines, which is quite funny at the moment. I think Piastri had a really, really good recovery, but he put himself in that place in the first place. But 3 for 3, Nico Hülkenberg. You are the dong, my sir. What a great drive from you, and what a great day for Haas. They've had a great point sold from them. So I'm sure Komatsu's cooking.
Damn right. Of course, where there is a driver of the day, there must be...
Get in the bin. Worst driver of the day. Worst driver of the day. You suck at driving.
There's a little part of me that thinks that Live Laugh Latifi is secretly saying bang, 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 bang. And now I can't unhear it.
We're not getting in the Ben. Okay.
No, but he's the worst driver of the day.
Oh, I understand.
That is quite common, so that would be fair. Sam, who have you got?
I'm gonna give it to Sergio Perez. When you've
Why?
got why? Well, many reasons. We could do a whole show about it, but to keep it short, your teammate got crushed into someone else, had a puncture, got a penalty. You still finished. Well done through the maths here. 17 seconds behind him. So, and you got beaten by Hulkenberg on the last lap. Absolutely mugged off. What a great defense from Hulk that was. So, yeah, you suck. 2-year deal.
You suck.
Sorry, he did. He sucks. It was just bad.
Harry?
Yeah, I know I've given this, I think, to Perez for the past couple of races, but today is not a good day. Verstappen, he had a crash, had a puncture, and was on 3 wheels for a whole lap, and then had a pit stop, and still, and then a 10-second penalty, and was still miles in front of you. That is...
It's embarrassing.
Very embarrassing.
Are you got embarrassed?
Embarrassed. Yeah, and I feel like I don't want people to think I'm being harsh on Perez, but there's being a distance off your teammate, and then there's that. That's just not acceptable as a result. And if Verstappen is up front leading the race and battling for a race win, if there's an incident like that, and as we're saying with Piastri, who wasn't quite there to pick up the pieces, Perez should be there. He should be in that battle as well to pick up the pieces of an incident with Verstappen and Norris, and he was nowhere close, and he couldn't get past a Haas. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The classic bang, yeah.
Oh dear.
You know what? I am going to give a different answer on this. Sergio Perez is 100% a contender for this. The writing was on the wall, really, from the point where Piastri got by him and he couldn't keep up with him. You knew at that point, this isn't going to go well for him. I also thought Yuki Tsunoda had a poor day. The other one, I am going to give it to Fernando Alonso. He beat Logan Sargent and Lando Norris, and that's the whole list. He got 10th place. We'll get on to it. A 10th-place penalty for killing Zhou Guanyu.
10th place?
A 10-second, sorry.
I was going to say, hang on.
10-second penalty for killing Zhou Guanyu.
Yeah, fair enough.
That wasn't very good. And just a rough day overall. Lance Stroll has finished quite a bit higher up than him in 12th place. So I think Perez, Alonso and Tsunoda were all towards the back of this vote, but I'll go Alonso.
Why did they pit him with like 2 laps to go? 2 laps to go-ish?
Well, this is my moment of the race because I've got no idea why, but he set the fastest lap. He got the fastest lap on the last lap. No reason.
You're not having it.
No,
we won it.
Maybe he's just been petty.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe so. And we've got Big Brain Strat as well.
Bob, we're gonna need you to box for wets. What? It's not even raining out. What are you talking about? Yeah, and Bob, if you get a chance, let your teammate pass you. What? He crashed out. He's not even in the race.
Harry, Big Brain Strat.
Well, there are a couple here. One of them being, I don't know whether to choose between these two. Okay, one of them is Kevin Magnussen's engineer telling him he needs to save tyres, and Kevin Magnussen telling him to F that.
That was fairly direct.
Yeah.
What's for the point quickly?
I'm not doing that strategy. Terrible. Maybe you should have done and beaten your teammate. The other one was the 2 Alpines. They were in that battle with Alonso, Ricciardo, the 2 Haas's, only a second or 2 up the road. Points on offer here, and I know they stayed out longer because I think they went onto the mediums for the last bit, whereas the rest of them went onto hards. When you're doing the overcut, what you shouldn't do is then have a battle with each other, because that slows you down.
Help each other.
Yes.
DRS chain.
We've got an opportunity here to get double points. What should we do? Battle each other. Yeah,
Push each other off the track on multiple occasions.
Definitely battle each other. So I think I love the K-Mag one, but we're going to have to go with that with Alpine because I appreciate the effort.
It kept it spicy, didn't it, in the middle of the Grand Prix, where it was a little quiet. They had fun.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, we'll get on to Alpine after the break as well, but they have miraculously managed to turn what would have been 1 point on the grid after 2 cars in front of them have crashed out to come away with 1 point. That's as Alpine as it gets. My big brain strat, Charles Leclerc, in it. Like, How many?
He's stopping now, isn't he?
Look, first of all, I don't mind the strategy itself. Fine. I mean, they are so far behind at that point. The fact that they were fighting back, okay. It's the fact that they said over team radio, we're still on course for points here.
Are you?
I'm sorry. They thought they were still on course for points. 2 cars in front of them crashed out and potentially could have given them 2 more spots. They did get 1 spot from Lando Norris, and that still wasn't enough to get further up than 11th. What simulation were you running? Was Charles Leclerc suddenly in the Red Bull? I don't know. I don't mind the strategy itself. It's just saying to Charles Leclerc, yeah, based on our simulations, we think you can get back in the points. So, yeah, if you don't, that's on you, mate.
The optimism. The optimism is what kills you.
Your submission, Sam?
All great shouts, and I would have picked a couple of those, so I'll go for something a little different. And I'm going to go with something that happened right at the very start of the Grand Prix, and that was Lewis Hamilton giving the position back to Carlos Sainz after a lap 1, turn 1 incident, which has famously never, ever been policed or penalised, and not even a command from the steward to say, give the position back, which they always give before they immediately penalise. No, Hamilton just went, oh yeah, I'll give it back immediately. And I think that was a really ridiculously bad choice from Lewis Hamilton.
So it was under investigation at the time, right? So you think they would have come back with no action?
I think they would have come, yeah, it was lap 1, turn 1. If you look at the replay, Hamilton is wheel to wheel with Sainz. He's got nowhere to go. Has to take evasive measures. The amount of times that we've seen, do you remember Lance Stroll crashing on the first lap in Russia like 5 or 6 years ago? No action taken. I think he took out 2 individuals. Hamilton being wheel to wheel off the track, is that going to be a 10-second penalty? I mean, with the stewards, you never know. But to me, shocking cool.
Yeah, maybe he's just like, you never know these days.
I can't
erase ban.
Just give it back.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't risk it.
I might be out for a year. I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to take our second break on this episode. On the other side, we're going to be talking about Alpine, Haas, and Sergio Perez.
Good.
Let's take a look at Alpine because Esteban Ocon managed to get into Q3 yesterday, started 10th, Gasly just outside of the top 10. Early on, they were, as is always the case with the Alpine drivers, together on track, battling with the Haas drivers. Now, obviously, Haas have come away here with a 6th and an 8th. Alpine have come away with a 10th and a 12th. Harry, how did that happen?
Alpine.
Says it all. Good. On to the next topic.
I don't know what.
And we're going to take our third break on this episode.
I mean, like I already said, I think Alpine could have been on here to get some good points. It would have been nip and tuck, I think, because they were going for an overcut. Well, not really an overcut because that didn't work at this with the way the tyre deck was. But they were going for, we'll go for the faster tyre for a shorter amount of time. We could try and take these guys at the end. But they didn't help themselves by then having a ding-dong battle whilst they're trying to do the overcut and the other guys are just pitted. So, because the Haas pace today, I know it gave Hulkenberg driver of the day, but K-Mag was up there. Very good. They like Austria, apparently.
It's their best result
since
at a Grand
2018,
Prix
right?
Since Austria 2 years ago.
Yeah. 2 years ago. Yeah.
Well, they technically got 7th in the sprint as well, so I think that weekend technically wins, but at least in the main race itself, 6th and 8th, I think
we worked it out a little while ago, didn't we? Because they got a double points finish a little while ago, but it was like 9th and 10th. So we worked out that that was the last time that they got a double points finish.
Correct. Yes.
So yeah, the Haas pace was very good today, and I'm sure they'll be encouraged, but it's just because they're Austria merchants apparently. But yeah, Alpine I think didn't help themselves with is the ice cream truck.
The ice cream trucks just go that fast.
Goodness me.
Alpine didn't help themselves with their intra-team battling as they always like to do. I think they could have probably gained. They could have gained maybe on like the likes of Ricciardo and stuff like that, but alas, they just wanted to battle themselves. So yeah, as you said, Ben, they've turned 1 point on the grid with a car in front retiring into a 1 point, which is excellent work from Alpine. And Haas were very, very impressive. I thought the strategy was a bit dodgy with how they pitted Magnussen first each time, but Hulkenberg had more pace anyway than his teammate, and as we said, held off Perez, which was actually an excellent drive.
What do you think, Sam?
Oh, Alpine. Let's just put it out here. Ocon's a terrorist. All right.
No, let's not.
Let's not do that.
He is terrorising killing everyone. The guy just won't let it go.
Just give him a job and it'd be fine.
No, he doesn't deserve it now. Sorry, Ocon. What are you doing? What are you doing? Running your teammate off the track so many times.
That was on Gasly.
Come on.
I'm joking.
You need to bleep there, Kirsty.
Honestly, it's on Ocon. Gasly was great. Gasly was so good this Grand Prix. I really do think that he was strong, and I think it was on Ocon. He was slower in front. He didn't make the pass on Alonso quick enough. You heard Gasly moaning about it. Then they kept fighting time after time again. Why are you holding each other up? Why are you slowing each other down when you've got...
In Ocon's defence, why wouldn't he? Because
I know. Why wouldn't he?
They sacked him.
You're not exactly marketing yourself to other teams. Oh, he's a real team player, this chap. Let's bring him in. I heard he's free agent. Bring him over. No. He's just going to run you off the road. He hates his teammates. He hates helping out his own team.
even the old teammates are not your teamates anymore. Fernando Alonso.
Alonso's trying to... Oh, God, get me away from Ocon. He's going to kill me.
Wow.
What a reaction. Owen Wilson's in the car. Wow. That's why you got 1 point. Because Ocon's an idiot. Sorry, Ocon, but that's 2 races now in the last 3 or 4 where you've been a bloody moron. And it's his fault. Gasly was great. Sublime. Teammate wars. We're on a roll. Can't wait for you to cry in misery later on at the end of the season. Haas, on the other hand, took full advantage of everything given to them. Perez was crap. We'll get on to him in a minute. And Hulkenberg did a great job of holding him off at the end. Magnussen had a great race. I know he didn't beat his teammate, but I thought he was really strong. He battled with his teammate, but they battled once. And they moved on with themselves, which I respect. And then they crashed, obviously. Sorry, I forgot where I was going with that point. And then Norris and Verstappen crashed. My point is here. And that obviously elevated them. And Haas took full advantage of that. Haas picked up the place with Norris, but then it looked like Alpine could have got a double points finish, as we've all said. And you're still outside the points. Ricciardo shouldn't have been beating both of those guys, really. He shouldn't have been in that fight. The Alpine is better, and yet he is. And I think Ricciardo deserves a mention because I think he had a really good Grand Prix today. I'm going to get on to Perez on a separate point in a minute, but Ben, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
More and more, Sam, you are becoming Michael Scott. Starting a sentence and just not knowing where it's going to end.
I just hope to find the end along the way.
So Alpine. To be honest, at this point, if you're expecting them to be anything more than just comedy value to this sport, then that's kind of on you. Like, it's well established now. I would say this: some of the battling itself, I haven't seen Ocon defending from Alonso on board Alonso. I'd like to see that because we saw it obviously as it happened, and we saw it from Gasly's perspective. It looks pretty awful, and I'm not sure how it wasn't investigated. I will give him somewhat of a benefit of a doubt until I see it from Alonso's perspective, because maybe it was not as bad as it looked. But the fact that the stewards didn't even pick that up, didn't even note it, as far as I'm aware, was a bit odd. Driving Gasly wide on the exit of turn 3, come on, there's just no need for that. In terms of like their pace and Gasly being let by to attack Alonso because Ocon couldn't get by Alonso, I don't think that would have mattered at all. So Ocon couldn't get by Alonso, who in turn was in the DRS of Ricciardo at this point. As we kind of saw, Gasly was hounding the back of Ocon, but Ocon still had DRS from the cars in front. Later on in the Grand Prix, we saw Gasly was behind Daniel Ricciardo in the DRS, and Gasly could not get by him. I think this was a setup thing of the Alpine drivers really struggled to make over. They had a solid car, but not necessarily for making overtakes, which isn't too much of a surprise given their engine is the slowest on the grid by quite some distance. So I think if Ocon had let Gasly by to try and attack Alonso in front of him, I don't think that would have made any difference whatsoever. Both cars struggled in the DRS of the cars in front. But yeah, I don't understand. It was great battling. I actually thought the battling they had when Gasly got by was superb. That was brilliant action. But the stuff beforehand where, like I say, the running Gasly out wide into turn 3, you are just slowing yourself down at that point to no benefit. But on the flip side of all of that, you do have to give credit to Haas, because Haas I love it when a team who doesn't have outright brilliant pace, like one of the top few teams, comes to a track with a very clearly defined strategy of how the race will go, because that's what Haas did. They said, look, we are going to set up our car to be very fast in a straight line, and we are not going to be undercut. Like, we are going to come in very early for our first stop, as Magnussen did, and we are going to ensure that if you want to beat us, you are going to have to overtake us on track, and we are going to make our car too quick in a straight line to do that. The fact that Perez couldn't get by Hülkenberg is proof of how they pulled this strategy off. So they deserve a lot of respect, and that respect comes in the form of 14 points. Excuse me, 12 points. I'm overselling them. Harry, your thoughts?
On Haas, sorry.
Oh, both Haas and Alpine.
He spoke first.
I did it first, mate.
He's gone first.
I've already done it. Do you want more thoughts?
We're doing it forever.
I don't have more thoughts.
Harry's had a lot of thoughts. At first.
Go back to Norris and Verstappen. Do you want to give your thoughts on that?
Have we spoken about George Russell winning yet?
No, we should probably mention that. Okay, that's driver of the day time. Right.
Oh, we're a professional show.
Goodness me.
Perez, I appreciate we've already discussed him somewhat in worst driver of the day, Harry, but this was eerily similar to Spain.
Yeah, I'd say it's worse than Spain. I don't know. He just, like I say, it would be okay if he was. There are other teams in this mix now with Red Bull and Verstappen, and I'd be less annoyed about this. Well, I'm not annoyed. I don't care that much. But I'd be less.
It's not that deep.
It's not that deep. But I'd be less frustrated with Perez if he was at least, say he was like fifth. He's like in that fight, or he's in the fight with Russell, Piastri, and Sainz. Not even beating them, but he's just in that fight. He might still be a way off of Verstappen. But the problem is, like today, he wasn't even anywhere near them. Like, he just was miles away from the rest of the top teams. And as I've already said, he couldn't get past the Haas. And I know Hülkenberg did an excellent job, and I'm not taking that away from Hülkenberg, but Perez is in a Red Bull that was fighting and leading the race for 60 laps, and he struggled to get past a Haas at the end of the race for P6. So if you're Red Bull, you must be. I would be a bit worried here, because this isn't good. And I guess they're lucky again that they've not really lost much not lost much. They gained in the championship. Oh no, they've not gained. Sorry, because have they gained? No, they cannot gain on McLaren. Sorry, because Piastri came second. But
yeah, they've.
Have they gained on McLaren on that one? I can't work that out.
Yeah, they've gained by 2. McLaren have gained 2 points.
2 points. So they're lucky in that respect that they've actually there's basically a net no loss on that. So they're sort of getting away with it. But if this carries on, and Perez is that far down, whilst you've got both McLarens in the fight up at the front, it's gonna hurt them. They could lose the constructors, and this is a guy who signed for two more years, which again baffles me.
Yeah, I think Perez can somewhat count himself lucky that Norris and Verstappen did have that incident, because they wouldn't have been far off lapping him. I think it'd have been fairly close. So, yeah, that would have obviously added even more insult to injury. Sam, your thoughts? This was, 7th place for Perez today.
This was a bad race from start to finish for Sergio Perez. The incident at the start with Piastri, how he forced him wide going through turn 4. I don't know how that wasn't a penalty. Ran him clean off the road.
Again, not investigated, right?
Not even investigated. I think Perez picked up a slight bit of damage. I even said on the live stream, I said, good. I said, you caused it, and you're not getting a penalty for it. So at least you get something that's going to slow you down, because that's not how you should be racing. I expect better from Sergio. Wasn't good enough. He was then slow for the majority of the Grand Prix, battling around with the Haases, with the Alpines. That's not where you should be. And in a race where your teammate crashes from the league of the Grand Prix, and both 1 and 2 essentially drop out of this, Red Bull, who are a championship-winning team, need to have a driver that, when an event happens like this, needs to be able to mop up the pieces. They need to be able to gather up the points. They need to be able to deliver when the other drivers had the one race of the season where Verstappen can't go on to be in the top 2 or 3. They needs to be there to gather it up for them, and he's let them down again, has Sergio Perez. The worst part is that in the point standings, right, Verstappen first, Norris second, Leclerc third, Sainz fourth. Perez is now fifth place in this title race, with Piastri only 6 points behind him and George Russell only 7 points behind him. At this point, Perez could be seventh in the title fight, while his teammate is nearly 80 points clear. That is devastating. It's not good enough. A 2-year deal feels like the biggest joke of a decision in Formula One right now. He's frauding a career at Red Bull at this point. It is a Mickey take that he is able to carry on driving in one of the most dominant teams in Formula One, where there are drivers scrambling for a race seat. It's embarrassing. That drive was embarrassing. He should look at himself and the fact that he can't perform at these European tracks, not good enough anymore. Not good enough. It was atrocious. And the fact that he still lost to his teammate by 17 seconds is disgusting. Awful.
Yeah, this was not a good drive whatsoever from him. And like I said, I think the writing was on the wall very early on in this race when Piastri got by him so comfortably. No, I mean, there's not too much you can defend Perez with at the moment. I think we have to somewhat reach a point here of, I appreciate they might not be the same drivers, but we've had Alex Albon, we've had Pierre Gasly, and we've had Sergio Perez be teammates to Max Verstappen. In all three instances, to a fairly similar degree, Verstappen has been utterly dominant against them. Albon is far better respected now than he was a few years ago. Gasly is far more respected now than a couple of years ago. Perez was far more respected before he joined Red Bull. There's a common denominator with these three drivers. They've all got Verstappen for teammates. I'm not saying that another driver couldn't go in and do a better job. I'm pretty sure there are a couple that could go in. Equally, there is a good part of this where I think Verstappen is making him look worse than what he is. And actually, that car is not... I mentioned this recently. I think that car is perhaps a little bit better than what Perez is making it look. Perez is making a little bit worse than Perez is making it look, but I do also think Verstappen is making it look a little bit better than what it is.
I see your point. I do see your argument, but Albon was so early in his career that he has grown into a competent driver. Gasly was so early in his career that he's grown into a competent driver. Perez was a competent driver. He's not displaying that anymore. He was better earlier.
I guess my point, can we confidently say if Gasly and Albon went back into that Red Bull seat, that they would be doing a far better job than Perez is doing at the moment? I can't say that confidently. Maybe they would, but I can't say that confidently.
Interesting. Let us know, folks. Let us know.
Let's move on to the junior team for Red Bull, who managed to pick up a couple of points in the form of Daniel Ricciardo finishing in 9th place. Obviously, they had a very tough race, Sam, in Spain, but they have, at least in the form of Ricciardo, bounced back quite a lot today. Will this give them some encouragement, given the upgrades that came in Spain and didn't work very well, at least initially?
Yeah, it looks like they really grew into the weekend. At the start of sprint qualifying and through the sprint race, it looked like they were struggling. They looked like they picked up some nice setup changes, and especially in the form of Ricciardo, who, again, I've said this a couple of times, I think this might be his best weekend so far this season, and finally gets in the points-paying position. So has a great race when it matters. He picks up 2 points. I think that's really, really good for Ricciardo. I think that's good for the team, especially in a weekend shrouding a little bit of controversy with some comments made by Yuki Tsunoda, of course, that were not really acceptable. I'm sure we'll get into that on another episode. But Ricciardo has shone a positive light on the team. And I'm sure if they can keep tweaking those upgrades and the setups to work better and they can get themselves back in the fight, great. The negatives here are that whilst they scored a 9th place with one car, both Haas drivers were in front of them. The Alpines were right behind them and still on, I think, was a less than optimal race for them both. You know, they also benefited from the fact that one of the drivers that was in front of them crashed out of the points. Leclerc finished outside of the points. So realistically, if everyone finishes where they're supposed to finish, I'll be both cars out of the points again. So I think it was actually more of a better drive from Ricciardo that was advantageous of the situation rather than the car itself being good enough to be inside the points. I think that's where the difference is. So I think it's sorry, I've just realized I'm glowing in the camera. You can't see it, guys, but my camera's having a moment where I've just been incredibly overexposed and I've been blinded by the sun. But yeah, basically, I think Ricciardo's doing a really good job. I don't think the car is actually good enough for proper point scoring.
What did you make of Ricciardo today, Harry?
I thought Ricciardo was impressive from Saturday afternoon onwards. Very impressive. Given where Tsunoda was, and again, I don't know whether that was Tsunoda struggling or, as you say, Sam, Ricciardo kind of making the car look better than it was. It's clearly better than it was in Spain. I don't know whether they took the upgrades off again. I don't think they have, but it was clearly looking better than it did last time out. And I thought Ricciardo drove again, like George Russell, it was quite a quiet race, but quite a measured, understated, but very good race out there. When we spoke about the battling Alpines and we had Alonso, that was all happening behind Ricciardo. And Ricciardo, I know it was a DRS train, but Ricciardo was holding them off without any DRS assistance from the Haases in front of him. So I thought, he had a pretty solid race. The car, I don't think, again, as you said, Sam, is right up there to be scoring regular points at the moment, as it maybe was earlier in the year, which, if Ricciardo's going to have an uptick in form now, that's a bit of a shame, because that's, I guess, 2 races on the bounce that he's beaten Yuki Tsunoda kind of comfortably. At least this time he's got some points out of it. But it was a bit trickier than it did earlier in the year to get regular points, as Tsunoda was doing. So, yeah, I don't know how happy they'll be. They'll be obviously happy with Ricciardo getting a couple of points, but the car still doesn't quite look as good as it did.
Yeah, it's well timed from Ricciardo's side, as his seat still hangs in the balance with Liam Lawson waiting in the wings. This certainly won't hurt his cause. Apologies. So yeah, it was. I thought he was one of the better drivers out there today. Ricciardo, he did a very good job and deserves the 2 points that he gets from it. And like you mentioned, he did a fairly good job in Spain as well and got nothing for it. So it's good to see good performances get something out of it. Yuki Tsunoda obviously quite a bit more off the pace. He really struggled even early on to stay in the DRS of Ricciardo, because I think very early on in this Grand Prix, they were next to each other, at least in terms of the standings. But whereas Ricciardo was able to stay on the back of the DRS train in front of him, Tsunoda could not do the same thing. So a good weekend for Ricciardo. And I guess that it depends how you want to look at it, because you could look at it from a perspective of, look where we were in Spain, look where we are now. That's good progress, which is absolutely true. You could also say that versus where they were before these upgrades, they're still probably just behind. So overall, they haven't made progress. But if Spain was the worst possible point for these upgrades, and this is a little bit better and Silverstone's better still, then it will all be worth it. But we'll have to see as the next couple of races roll on. Okay, we're going to take our final break on this episode. On the other side, we've got Moment of the Race. As always, we've got Moment of the Race submissions coming in from our Discord members. Thank you to all of those. And there are a lot of you that have brought in submissions for the Moment of the Race. But before we get to those, myself, Sam and Harry obviously have ours to share. So we'll start with you, Harry.
I don't know where to start with this race.
So many.
Okay. Fernando Alonso just battering Zhou Guanyu out the way as a fair overtake. I'm fine with that.
That lockup is still happening.
The Alpines battling with Alonso, and Alonso, I know we've already said this, but Alonso just saying, wow, like his own Wilson, followed by Gasly getting past and saying, ciao.
That is so good. That I've got that written down. Ciao.
Which is sensational work. Obviously, in the Norris...
You did a cur in front of it, right?
Ciao. Nice, Ben. Excellent work. That's sensational. The Norris-Verstappen battle on its own, excellent. The one I'm going to go for is Toto Wolff getting so overexcited by the fact that they could win the race. He shouts down the radio at George Russell, who's in the middle of a braking zone and a corner. It goes, "We can, George, we can win this race." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, Toto, leave me alone.
I am braking the car."
That wasn't even his only great team radio of the race. He had another one for Lewis Hamilton earlier where he gets the penalty and he was like, "It's still all to play for," or whatever he said. Like,
Toto, I don't know what came over him today. He was very overexcited, but I really enjoyed that. Some classic Toto Wolff radio there. That'll be mine.
That's a fair submission. That was one of the 3 that I had written down as well, because I feel like, George Russell might well have been the king of team radio last year. I feel like Toto Wolff has taken that on, because we had Focus George Focus not that long ago as well, right? So Toto Wolff Team Radio was one of mine. One that was mentioned earlier, Fernando Alonso just taking away the fastest lap from Max Verstappen for no reason. That's not a battle, I'm afraid, Fernando, but fair play to you. He just wanted a bit of fun, didn't he, right at the end of the race? But I think my moment of the race is actually going to go to Mr. Ted Kravitz, who, after the Alpines battled, which in itself was a moment of the race, he just goes, what are they going to do? Fire him twice? And I went, yeah, probably. They will find a way to do that.
Doing it for the next Grand Prix.
If anyone can find a way to fire someone twice, it would be Alpine. Sam, your moment of the race.
You've mentioned so many great ones. We had a couple of serious ones in terms of battles. Piastri going around the outside a couple of times. The Alpine battle with the Chow on top. I don't know. We've all mentioned King of the Radio, George Russell. There's a lot of great radios. But crossing the line and going, boom, shakalaka, yabba dabba doo is by far the best
How
radio.
old is he?
That is the moment of the race. Boom, shakalaka, yabba dabba doo. As you cross the race wing is iconic behaviour. You know the Jose Mourinho meme where he gets his headphones and he's like, I've got to take my headphones off because I can't listen to that. Spectacular. He quotes Fred Flintstones where he wants, and I love it. So yeah, that's my moment of the race.
Time for the Discord submissions then.
Okay, as you mentioned, Ben, we've got a lot in here, but first up is Hazard.
Right, boys, my moment of the race was Liberty Media finally, after all these years, understanding how to do a picture-in-picture, something which I did on Windows Movie Maker 20 years ago, but it was very refreshing to see. Fantastic, keep it up. Right, I'm off to the Boozer to watch England progress through the Euros. Cheers, boys.
Yeah, I'm missing that. I'm quite annoyed.
Progress is ambitious. I forgot to say as well is the graphic, the really unnecessary graphic of the gap between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc after he came out of his pit stop at 68 seconds. No need for that.
Lapped.
No need.
No need
Absolutely
for that,
savage. Thanks for that, Hazard. Enjoy the game. Blair is next.
Blair, calling in from New Brunswick, long time, first time, etc. My moment of the race is Toto's best impression of a giddy Keebler elf. You can win this, George. George, you can win this.
Excellent.
Great accent. Almost as good as mine.
Almost. Next up is Ruth. I hope this works.
Hi, it's Lee, all the way from South Africa with my moment of the race. Ooh, spicy race between the two Haas drivers fighting each other, Alpine fighting each other, the radio messages, and then poor Charles, the Chuckles, the club, worst strategy ever on lap 35, who already stopped 3 times. I mean, come on, guys. Anywho, diddle-do.
Oh, I love Ruth's enthusiasm every time.
Tiddle-do. Next up, I feel like this is a return. Darth Fart Noise.
Oh, yes.
God, it's been a while.
Hey guys, Darth Fart Noise here. My moment of the race was when we actually went back in time. I did not believe my eyes. We actually went back into our time machine and went all the way back to 2018 and saw the Max Verstappen of old. I mean, it was clearly his fault, but I just cannot believe after all this he still extends his championship lead. All right. Bye, guys. Love the show, and Darth Fart Noise out.
That is still the best sign off.
Oh, get yourself a TV show, mate. Do that.
What are you doing, honey? Sorry, just doing my submission.
Signing off. I'm going to podcast to hundreds of thousands.
Why are you doing that? Excellent work. Next up is the first of 2 submissions from Bristol Liam.
God save the king. Piastri with some filthy moves today. George Russell bombing a win off everyone else. But man of the race, probably the picture I took of Sam and posted on my Discord. That has been deleted, by the way, so you can rest easy. Ciao.
It was horrible. He caught me in one of the most disgusting poses. I'm halfway through a word, and I'm like this. Honestly, it could not be less attractive if it tried. So thanks for that.
I thought it was going to be your nipple again. So quite
No,
frankly, that's
there is a video
relief.
of my nipple on Twitch, so if you'd like to go and see it.
That's fine. You don't need to. Next up.
No one wants to see that.
Next up is Faster Than Your Mama.
Hey y'all, I'm having a hard time with my moment of the race this week. It's between Chucky's first pit stop, second pit stop, his third pit stop, or his fourth pit stop. I can't decide. Keep breaking late, y'all.
That's great banter.
The third one was underrated. Very good pit stop.
Very good one.
It's always the sequels that never get the love.
Next up is submission 2 of 2 from Bristol Liam.
Nipples out for George, by the way.
Yes! Nipples out for George!
No.
Oh, yes, Liam.
No, I think we might have to ban Liam. That might be a yellow card going come in there.
Might make him a VIP on Twitch.
Ben's lost of words. Next up is Norm from Texas.
Oh, hello, my late-breaking friends from across Lake Big Wet. It is I, Norm from Texas, and I am here to give you my moment of the race. And my moment of the race was Sergio Perez in turn 3 getting absolutely slapped with a sausage and a croissant. Bro, you got passed by 2 Alpines. Oof. Anyway, keep breaking late.
Sausage and a croissant.
Goodness me.
I'm off to Paris next week, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, a sausage and a
You'll be
croissant.
kicked out of the country if you ask for that.
I'm never going to make it
in. Next up is Raph.
The moment of the race wasn't actually from the race, but it was when Hans Zimmer decided to join in with the champagne spraying. I thought that was really funny.
Excellent.
Other than that, incredible race. Adios.
Speaking of, thoughts on the anthem?
Oh, it was something.
It was.
It was.
They certainly did an anthem.
Hey, tried it. Good job. Let's move on.
My thoughts exactly.
No one can deny an anthem was played.
No, dig it.
Next is Joy.
Yes! That's a win, baby! Even Papa Toto was there to celebrate it with him because he didn't get to in Brazil. I literally cried for I think 10 to 15 minutes. This has been all amazing, all freaking beautiful. And how could I'm Joy. I'm gonna pick George's win as the moment of the race. Absolutely amazing race. 11 out of 10. Ciao.
Ciao.
Would have been an 11 out of 10 submission if it had a yabba dabba do at the end.
She got the chow in there. I respect that little reference. But yeah, I mean, joying name, joying nature today.
Finally, I just realised Joy has been constantly putting George Russell as under pressure for the weekend. It's worked.
It's worked.
It's worked out. Next up, last but not least, is Big Philly Style.
Hey everyone, my moment of the race has definitely got to be Toto Wolff on the radio. George, we can win this one, George. If you bring it home, we will give you all the pumpernickel bagels you could ever want. Cheers, folks.
Yeah, get the pumpernickel out.
Appreciate you laughing at your own submission as well. That's our kind of humour.
We are funny. Laugh at ourselves.
No one's as funny as yourself. That's the late breaking motto.
That's a life you have to live with, okay? You've got to be funny for yourself.
Goodness me.
Boy.
Thank you, everyone.
What an absolutely exhausting review, where we have somehow managed to pack in nearly everything that happened. I'm sure there are some other drivers and teams that we haven't got onto, but we will, of course, break down anything else in our preview and some Patreon episodes as well. And most importantly, Sam, some power rankings tomorrow.
Power rankings coming up on Patreon. Get yourself subscribed. Thank you for all the love that you've shown us. And, we got our live show coming up. So there's lots going on for LB. Silverstone coming up as well. We're going to be doing our preview as the live show, and then we'll be back at the weekend as well. So loads to roll into. Get yourself in the Discord. Get yourself to Patreon. If you're enjoying the free episodes, you think, oh, I'd like a bit more of this, please. I don't know why, but you can pay for it. And it's not actually that expensive, despite man who doesn't understand money thinking it's about 750 quid a day. Loads of good stuff reasonable. Over there. Oh, he's back. Follow us on social. Watch it on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch as well. Loads going on. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you soon. In the meantime, I've been Samuel Sage.
I've been Ben Hocking.
And I've been Harry Eade.
And remember, keep breaking late.